Hisoka has a secret contact aboard the Black Whale 1, a very important person, and Chrollo's speculation from the very beginning of this mission has been that Hisoka has been in contact with one of the 14 Kakeen princes. It's a solid idea, and it's not particularly difficult to see how this could have happened, because Hisoka is a floor master of Heaven's Arena, which are very public televised fight battles. So if you're looking for a powerful person to assist you in, I don't know, some sort of succession contest, then this is the first place you'd stop. Now there is, there's a tiny slight issue that Hisoka did die in his latest fight. But if a Kakeen representative was there and discovered that Hisoka was alive, then he would become an even more desirable person to have on your side. It's not out of the question that one of the princes did contact him in order to assist in the succession contest, but it's also not out of the question that Hisoka himself applied to one of the bodyguard positions advertised by 6 of the 14 princes, or made his way on board via one of the mafia factions, or is secretly working with Kurapika and rekindling that York New City clown revenge magic. And there's also one more possibility that I haven't seen anyone mention. So we've got a lot to get through, but we're going to start rather simply, with the first prince under suspicion being 9th Prince Hawkenberg. Now look, I don't personally buy into this at all. I think there are much stronger candidates, but here is the reasoning behind it. It all has to do with Hisoka knowing about and understanding the abilities of Hawkenberg and his guardian spirit beast. Because while all factions aboard know about the rumblings and most princes have made the connection to Hawkenberg, almost none of them know the details of the ability itself. We're pretty much just looking at Benjamin, who's discovered these details through the trial and error of his people continuously falling victim to the ability. But there's also Kurapika, who does know about the pinion marks because they were revealed to him by one of Hawkenberg's guards, and Kurapika was clever enough to deduce the broader nature of the ability from that alone. But other than that, it's pretty much Hawkenberg himself. So some people have suggested that Hawkenberg is Hisoka's contact, and that explains how he both knows about the ability and has tier 1 access. I personally don't like this idea though, because Hawkenberg wasn't even planning on participating in the contest. He'd even resolved to remove himself before harming any of his siblings, and so I don't see any reason to preload Hisoka on board. Plus, Hawkenberg and Hisoka, they do not mix. Hawkenberg is a completely selfless individual who attracts similarly selfless people, but Hisoka is completely selfish in every way. Even in this chapter, all he can do is perpetually think about himself and his own desires. And as for how Hisoka knows about the details of the ability, my guess is that he got excited by the rumblings happening around him, then decided to track them down and was actually present for one of the shots, which likely would have been the most recent one when Might got hit on tier 2. Even if he didn't see the whole thing, all he needs is a glimpse to put it all together, just like Kurapika. So I don't think that someone necessarily gave him the information about Hawkenberg's ability. I think that Hisoka just figured it out. So that is one prince down. But another extremely unlikely prince is Benjamin, because there's just no reason to source Hisoka for his purposes. The first prince is very no-nonsense and already has his own private Nen-using military. Having someone like Hisoka on his side would be seen as far more of a liability than an asset, because Hisoka himself says, he doesn't like team play, which means that he would not be good as part of any army. Also, Benjamin went into this contest believing that both he and Camilla were the only Nen users, so he thought that he was going to completely wipe out all the other princes in a matter of days. So there's no need for Hisoka. I do, however, think there's a much stronger argument for Camilla, because Benjamin usurped the main bulk of the Kakeen military might, and Camilla has since been in a position of cobbling together an army based on Benjamin's leftovers, which is why Camilla built a pauper army of Nen curse users. But Camilla is experienced enough to know the true value of a powerful Nen user, so there may be a situation where she potentially reaches out to Hisoka knowing that she's at a disadvantage against Benjamin. But with what we know of Camilla herself, that seems very unlikely to me. Camilla is just so proud and is stupidly overconfident in her own Nen ability, and my read on her is that she's gone into this naturally believing that she's superior and doesn't need any assistance from outsiders. Generally, the higher the prince rank, the heavier the burden of pride, and the more unlikely they become to form a coalition with some clown that they saw on TV. In regards to the 3rd and 4th princes, we're going to get back to them in a bit, but to round out the big 5, we have Tobeppa, but I've seen nothing to suggest that she would go to this extent, especially because she was unaware of Nen before boarding the Black Whale 1. That's a big thing, and it's not that the princes needed to know Nen, but for one of them to have gone out of their way to hire Hisoka, we are going to need a pretty damn convincing reason for that alignment, which is something that the 3rd and 4th princes, despite not knowing about Nen, actually have. Although just like Nen, they may not know it. Because Hisoka could have been seen as a very attractive recruit for the mafia factions. Most of them are well aware of the Phantom Troop and are avid fans of Heaven's Arena, so much so that Chrollo and Hisoka are both celebrities in these mafia circles. Each mafia family family has a prince as a benefactor and they can request access to Tier 1. And as for the reason why they would go after Hisoka, it does seem a bit odd considering their focus on balance. You'd really only want to bring in someone of Hisoka's caliber if you were planning for war and deliberately disturbing balance, which is why we can say that the only family we know for a fact it isn't is the Haoli, because we saw them genuinely search for and offer fake Hisoka Benosoka a room on Tier 1. So our prince contact is definitely not a Zangle. And before this chapter, I never would have suspected Luzurus and the Chara family either, but having second thoughts about that at the moment. Because looking back on it, the Chara did a pretty lazy job of Hisoka hunting. All of the heavy lifting to even find the fake Hisoka was done by the Haoli family, and Kenny Wang does seem to be in a rather traitorous position as well, and is certainly withholding information regarding his alignment. As in the English translation, he outright states his allegiance to Morena when he says, "We might have to use our Joker." And of course, the use of the word Joker is very interesting and could be directly referring to Hisoka because of his playing card motif, as well as his narrative role as a Joker in every Hunter x Hunter arc he appears in. He's always this complete wild card who can be used to both win and lose the game for anyone he's affiliated with. But if that is the case, then the more likely answer is that Hisoka was recruited not by Luzurus and the Chara family, but by the Haoli family and maybe specifically Morena herself. Hisoka doesn't necessarily need to be working for the Fourth Prince. The Fourth Prince doesn't even need to know about his existence because Morena herself would have had that Tier 1 access. In fact, she has a whole room assigned to her on Tier 1 that we haven't seen her spend any time in because she's too busy plotting in the Haoli hideout. And we can actually confirm her presence there because Yoko Tani's Nen ability requires Morena to be in the hideout to function. So her room on Tier 1 is otherwise vacant, so it seems like a pretty good spot to store a Joker. And Morena's just the kind of person who would appreciate the chaos that a sexually aggressive battle clown can induce. Because in the end, Morena's goal is to destroy, quote, everything, which means that she doesn't need to control Hisoka. She just needs to unleash him and let him do his thing. And whatever he ends up doing is going to assist her goal. But we should also look at the other side of this. Everything I've said so far has been under the assumption that someone contacted Hisoka, but it very well could be the other way around. After Heaven's Arena, Hisoka vowed to kill the rest of the Phantom Troop, and their next mission was already scheduled to be aboard the Black Whale 1. The last thing that Crawler said to Shalnak over the phone was the plan to rob the Kakin royal family, which I think often gets forgotten, because the events on the Black Whale 1 are presented as the Phantom Troop hunting Hisoka, but it's actually the other way around. He is hunting them. And probably the easiest mechanism for Hisoka to get on board was through the bodyguard positions being advertised by the mid to lower ranking princes. These positions gave preferential treatment to hunters, and Hisoka is a licensed hunter. 6 princes in total were hiring third-party bodyguards, and multiple applications were disqualified, so Hisoka could have only applied to 1. The 6 princes who had open offers were Tyson, Luzurus, Kacho, Momose, Mariam, and Wobble. And of those candidates, we've already kind of ruled out Luzurus, but I would also remove Momose, Kacho, and Mariam, because they're children, and Hisoka is a big red flag for children, but also because I can't see those factions allowing Hisoka to just go and do what he wants, which right now is not bodyguarding. However, there is one candidate who I think makes a bit of sense, and that would be 6th Prince Tyson, whose entire staff has been composed of beautiful men, and if Hisoka applied to her, there is a 100% chance of Tyson accepting. Because Tyson reacts to pretty men in very much the same way that Bisky does. And Tyson herself is very, very kind to her staff. She even got one of them a birthday cake. So the only question is that it might be difficult to see Tyson being so lenient that she's allowed Hisoka to roam free for 11 days now and completely neglect all bodyguard duties. But then again, I don't think that Tyson quite realizes how much danger she's in. Even at this stage, she is still preaching that love will win the contest. So maybe she is willing to be quite lenient with Hisoka. But the true wildcard idea I have here is that Hisoka could be working with 14th Prince Wobble, or more accurately, with Kurapika. Because Kurapika built a crack team of individuals to assist his mission and had a fair bit of trouble recruiting people. Kurapika was so desperate for powerful people that he needed Killwa's recommendation of Bisky. And during Yokunyu City, Kurapika and Hisoka had a surprisingly good working relationship. They were incredibly helpful to one another, and I don't think it would have been out of the question for Kurapika to have seen Hisoka as a valid option. Not for basic bodyguard duties, no, don't let that man anywhere near the baby, but someone who Kurapika can really call on if things start to get out of hand. And Hisoka wouldn't necessarily decline this offer because it gives him what he wants, an invitation onto the Black Whale 1 to kill the Phantom Troop. Although it gets a bit tricky because this would imply that unless Hisoka kept this secret for whatever reason, Kurapika may already know that the Phantom Troop are on board, which I don't think he does. It feels quite unlikely at the moment. But then again, Kurapika has had much bigger concerns of late, and it would explain why Hisoka has been given free reign of Tier 1 for the moment. So maybe he's he's acting as a joker for Kurapika. But there's also another option that I don't see a lot of people, if any people, exploring, which is that Chrollo could have had the right idea but the wrong title. I mention this at every opportunity I can, but the princes are not the only people fighting in this contest. At every available moment, the queens are using as much power as they can to assist the princes, aka their children, and if a queen is looking to ensure victory, then they could have scouted Hisoka and brought him aboard. And that would explain why Hisoka is allowed to be a free-range battle clown. Because he's not directly assigned to a prince, but for now killing time and maybe even a couple of people just waiting to be tapped by a queen. Or for a particularly chaotic individual, Hisoka was just hired and told to go wild as he sees fit. And that sort of act is always going to benefit the lower princes because they have less to lose. And they're also much less attractive targets for someone like Hisoka in general. He is only interested in the strong, and that is not the low princes. For this, I'd be thinking of someone like Swinko, because 8th Prince Sale wasn't at all serious about winning the contest, which is why he's dead, but his mother certainly was serious about winning, and she could have been doing everything within her ability to ensure that Sale won. And unleashing Hisoka to kill a bunch of dudes on the ship certainly helps that, but after Sale's death, this would leave Hisoka politically homeless, which I believe is his preferred method of existence. Actually, I don't think Hisoka has a home, like a permanent residence anywhere, like a literal one. There are definitely options though. As much as Chrollo speculates that Hisoka was in contact with a prince, it could be someone prince adjacent like a queen, a mafia faction, or a Kurapika. And at this stage, I see all of those options as more likely than direct contact with a prince. Or we could just throw everything out the window and just wait for that reveal that Hisoka is an illegitimate prince of the Kakin Empire and he's been hiding his scar this entire time with texture surprise.